Oh, thank you to the community at Upaya. I miss you and love you. To my dear friend Roshi and Noah, thank you for your kindness always in welcoming me with such open arms. It always inclines me to toward an open heart, and then to try and speak lovingly and truthfully. So thank you, Noah. Thank you. So coming home to the body, that's our subject this evening. You know, when we say just sit, we're actually engaging in a radically simple way to organize ourselves in order to see what's here, to see what's true. And we begin with the breath, as we did just a little while ago, sensing its rhythm and its texture and the whole length of it, the inhale, the entire exhale. And then we sense the body, and as we offer it our precise attention, the body gives us more access, we could say, to our emotional and mental states. And all of it, is in the service of insight and the service of liberation, awakening, freedom. But all of us, myself included, well, we have a strong conditioning to take refuge in the mind and to disconnect from our senses. You know, we anesthetize birth. We interfere with the dying process. When there's pain, it's a problem that we think we have to fix immediately. We put grief on a timetable. We're embarrassed by our aging. We view life as a problem to be solved instead of a mystery to be lived into. And I don't know about you, but living in accordance with that conditioning causes me a great deal of suffering. And that conditioning starts really early. You know, my friend Tara Brock, she tells a wonderful story of a first grade school teacher who instructs her class, if you need to go to the bathroom, raise your hand with 2 fingers. And then one little boy in the back of the classroom, he asks, how will that help? John O'Donohue, the wonderful wild English poet and former priest, you know, he wrote something beautiful once. He said, we need to come home to the temple of our senses. Our bodies know they belong, but it's our minds that make us homeless. And he goes on to say, we rush through our days with such stress and intensity as if we were here to stay. And the serious project of the world depended completely on us. And it seems he's pointing to 2 misperceptions here, 2 illusions. The first is the illusion of permanence. Each of us know, everyone here knows we're going to die. Everybody knows this. Yet in our day-to-day experience, we get seduced in a way by the trance of believing that this moment is on its way to the next moment. And we don't appreciate the preciousness of this moment. We're always toppling forward into the next one. And the second illusion that I think he's pointing to is the unconscious belief that our self is at the center of the world. Of course, we have to take care of ourselves, take care of these bodies, but too often we get so fixated on what will enhance our sense of self and what will threaten our sense of self. And to me, these 2 preoccupations, they cause us to be homeless. So tonight I wanted to speak about coming home to the body. Mindfulness is a misleading name for our practice. The body is where we metabolize, where we integrate our experience. This practice isn't about a disembodied awakening. And while the thinking mind and the emotional heart may be elsewhere, the body is always here. If it's not here, we're really in trouble, huh? The body is where we cultivate the quality of presence. Even conventionally, we speak about the body as the center of intuition, right? We say we have a gut sense. I like that expression, a gut sense. To me, it feels like getting direct and very immediate feedback, information from our body. Something that we don't always have language for, we don't always even understand, but we have this direct, immediate knowing that's sometimes there. And the body, particularly the belly center, is the action center. It's how we express our awakening in the world, through the body. So when meditating, I think it's really important to keep sensing our body, to stay in direct touch with its movements and its sensations. And this, of course, includes all the experiences of suffering, the sometimes painful and agitated states and sensations that we experience. But also, it's a skillful means to experience the pleasurable, the delightful, the enjoyable, the satisfying, the refreshing, the robust, the delicate, the refined, the subtle experiences of the body. My teacher would remind us of the importance of grounding our awareness in our body by saying that the essential qualities of your Buddha nature won't appear over your head. They're going to appear, they're going to arise within you. So to awaken, we have to plant ourselves right here, in this moment, in this body, right here on this earth. The Buddha taught, everything can be found in this fathom-long body. The origination of the cosmos, the cessation of the cosmos, the path and practice leading to the cessation of the cosmos. Now, when I talk about sensing the body, I'm not speaking about our concept of the body or our scientific or medical knowledge of the body, or even our historical relationship with the body, nor our self-image of the body that we all carry around. I think it's important here at the beginning to also recognize that the body is a manifestation of nature, not above or below it, not apart or separate from nature. So even as I'm talking now, just as I'm beginning to speak here, are you sensing your body? Are you at home? Are you attuned to its messages? As I speak now, try and keep about 60% of your attention in your body. You can listen to me, but I think if you keep sensing your body, you'll actually learn a lot more. So sense these arms and legs, this chest, this back, this belly. The large, gross sensations, pressure of the chair against your bones, the air on your face and hands, the sensation of the fabric of your clothing against your skin. And the internal sensations, right? The tingling, the pulsing, the humming that's there. See if you can take what I'm saying in through your body instead of your head. What's in between you and being at home in your body? For a lot of us, It's just the habit of living conceptually, of not planting ourselves in our direct experience of the body. So just check now, again, check again right now. What's your experience right now? Are you at home in your body? My teacher would ask us, are you in your feet, or do you just have feet? You live in them, or they are just things that you use to walk with? Are you in your belly, or do you just know vaguely that you have a belly? Are you in your hands, or do you just move them from a distance? And if you aren't in your body, are you preparing so that someday you can be in your body? I mean, what are you waiting for? What are you saving yourself for? I'm talking about knowing the body immediately, intimately, in its most elemental form. You know, in many forest hermitages, young monks and nuns are told to go out into the forest, to go out into the jungle and sit in meditation. And the instruction is to remain there until they know they belong. And this belonging, it isn't about a mere membership in a monastic community. It's the encouragement to reflect on a more fundamental sense of belonging, one which involves the falling away of difference, actually. And in my experience, that happens quite naturally in the dying process. In all the ways we've defined ourselves, the identities we carry. I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a Buddhist practitioner, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm a failure, I'm a people person, whatever it is, you know. They're all stripped away by illness or they're gracefully given up, but they all go. And then I think we discover something far more elemental, more connective, more fundamentally true. You know, a lot of spiritual traditions and many ancient cultures suggest that all of life is composed of 4 basic elements, right? Earth, water, fire, and air. Some traditions add a 5th of space. And these components are said to dissolve when we die through a kind of interdependent process of body and mind. Now, there are beautiful, subtle teachings that illuminate both the outer and inner dissolutions that occur at the time of dying. But today, I just want us to focus very simply on the dissolving of the senses and the elements so that we can emphasize our common ground with each other, our belonging, and maybe to give ourselves a sense of how to practice with these elements in our meditation. So the 4 elements, as we know, well, they're more than physical elements. They have related emotional and mental characteristics as well. So earth has that spectrum of experience. The physical experience is hardness to softness, right? Think of hard rock or soft mud. But consider also the characteristics of earth of abundance and the peaceful stillness of dormancy. Water, you know, the spectrum, it covers the whole spectrum, right? From fluidity to cohesiveness, right? I mean, think about the characteristics of flowing water, the great rivers, and the cohesiveness of the Arctic glaciers. The fire element, the spectrum from heat to cold. Think of the seasons of summer and winter and how we rely on the sun's warmth and are relieved by a cool spring breeze. And the air, that spectrum of stillness to motion. Think about your breath. Can you experience it just now? Or reflect on the polar vortex, right? Those swirling winds, those swirling Arctic winds. Or the sirocco's that carry the Sahara's desert sands to Western Europe. I mean, here we sit, all of us, in the midst of the elements, composed of the elements. And yet we too often experience ourselves as having some dominant position over nature, thinking of nature only as resources that we're entitled to harvest. And with this view comes environmental destruction and a painful sense of separation rather than one of belonging. So can we open beyond this body of fear, expanding, knowing, surrendering our small sense of separate self to an absolute undivided nature of our true nature? And sometimes when I'm being with a family of someone who's dying, I use the model of the four elements to help them understand what's occurring, how the person's dying and how their identities and all the component parts, the gross physical elements and of their body and also their thoughts and their perceptions are all changing, all dissolving. Like Samantha, who was a wilderness guide, and she was in her mid-40s, I'd say, pretty young, and I sat with her one seemingly endless night as her husband Jeff was dying. And she asked me what she could do for him that might help. And I asked her, well, what do you do with your young children when they're sick? And she said, well, I sit with them quietly and I sit right next to their bed, or sometimes I snuggle up with them and I speak less and I listen more. And I tell them in words and in touch how much I love them. Beautiful, I said, and what else? And as I sat there, I could see her remembering, but she already knew. And she said, well, I try to create a kind environment. It's peaceful, and so they're not so afraid. And I promise I won't leave them. And I tell them it's okay to be sick. And it won't be like this forever. And then she began to cry. She said, but I've never done this dying thing. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what's happening. It's natural for us to fall apart when we face loss. And finding our ground or recalling what's been most meaningful to us can help us stay present and with what we're experiencing. And for some people, that's attending to the breath or some other practice that we've cultivated over the years. And for others, it's relationships. But for Samantha and Jeff, who were wilderness guides, their church was the wilderness. And so knowing they'd fallen in love on a backpacking trip, I asked her what she most loved about the outdoors. That's a good way to get to what people have most confidence in. What do they most love? And she said, oh, I love being in the middle of it. I love everything about it. She said, I love that the rain soaks me to my bones. I love the cold night sky. I love the winds that carry, smells to my feet. It's my real home, she said, and it's where I most belong. And so I suggested to her that right now, Jeff might be in the middle of it all. His body was in a very fundamental, elemental way, made up of earth, water, fire, and air. And in a way, in his dying, he was returning to the nature that they so loved. You could see the earth element, Jeff's body became very still. That happens as the earth element fades. In the early stages of dying, people complain sometimes that their legs feel like they've gone numb, or they're difficult to arouse, or they're unresponsive. And so without going into much detail, I just said, can you see the earth element in Jeff? Was he a solid guy? That's what I asked her, and she said, she said he was so strong and powerful, actually. And as she was kissing his hand, she started to laugh, and she said, but he was also really stubborn and hard-headed. But he had the softest skin. And she was watching these qualities in Jeff fade away. Right, I said. Solid, fixed form that's losing its strength, drained of energy, unable to support life anymore. The earth element was dissolving. Some texts say the earth returns to the earth. Others say the earth dissolves into water. So the person that's dying might experience an inability to swallow fluids, or they have urinary or bowel incontinence, or the blood circulation slows, or the nose dribbles. And in the days prior to this, Samantha had given Jeff sips of water and chips of ice, but now he couldn't swallow anymore. And so she would soak a little sponge and put it on his lips, and more often she'd just dip her finger in water and let him suck on her finger. And she talked about, she's getting into it now, she talked about the free flowing of their creative ideas when they were planning wilderness trips. And she said that in the past few days, she'd watched Jeff, sometimes get contracted as he became afraid. His body would contract and his mind would contract in fear. And I reminded her of the other element of water, its cohesiveness, And we spoke about the great rivers that they'd kayaked and to dry up in certain seasons, or the frozen glaciers that they'd walked and hiked, that calve off and slip into the sea sometimes. The water element was dissolving, returning to water, or some say giving its way to fire. We can watch this happen. This isn't some esoteric teaching. I watched it and shared it with people, all kinds of people. People who had no understanding of Buddhist practice, no recognition of these esoteric teachings. Fire element, In the process of dying, we've watched this, right? We've watched the body's temperature rather fluctuate, and when there are infections, a fever can rise up, or slowing metabolism can cause the skin to get cool and moist. And as Jeff came closer to death, his hands and his feet became colder, and the heat gathered in the center of his body toward his big, wonderful heart. And Samantha reminisced, about the passionate fire of their lovemaking and the heat of their arguments. And that awful feeling of turning away from each other in bed, in cool indifference. Any of us that have had partners have done that. I have. And I remember she kissed him from his head to his toes, and she apologized for ever having turned away from him. And the fire element returns to fire, or some say dissolves into air. And in this final stage of physical death, people frequently exhibit these dramatic changes in their breathing patterns. And sometimes the breath is the only thing in the room, a lot like birth that way. Everyone's attention is focused on the breath, wondering, when will it stop? Has it stopped? When there's Cheyne-Stokes breathing or erratic breathing, will it come back? Jeff was calm now. There was no more struggle and agitation. The anxiety and the disorientation that had so characterized the last few days was gone. All that remained was this rhythm of his breath, sometimes erratic, sometimes smooth. Time slipped away, and Samantha just sat there. And then she did something that really surprised me. She spoke to Jeff, and she said, "I want to meet you one more time." And while she wasn't a meditator, she said, "I'm going to go inside and I'm going to meditate as deeply as I know how so that I can meet you one more time." She closed her eyes, and I just watched, and it was like her and Jeff, they met in some profound bottomless space. And in that moment, it seemed like the past was gone and there was no future. There was only this moment. And Jeff exhaled a few more times, and then he didn't breathe again. And there was this stillness, this ease, this black peacefulness that embraced us all. And I just sat there wondering what would come next. And then Samantha spoke out loud, in a way talking to the space as much as she was talking to me. And she said, "Oh, I thought I was losing him, but he's everywhere." Earth returns to earth, or dissolves into water. Water returns to water, or dissolves into fire. Fire returns to fire, or dissolves into air. And the coarse elements and consciousness dissolve into space. And the space isn't just physical space, it's the Dharma Dhatu, the space of reality. So consciousness is dissolving into space, which means it's actually dissolving into wisdom. And any of us who have sat at the bedside, we can see that as the physical elements dissolve, we often can recognize the absence of animating qualities that were so evident before and so clearly missing in this corpse. Our instruments, our devices, they can measure the physical disintegration that occurs, but the inner dissolution that happens, it's happening simultaneously and subtly, all at the same time. Yeah. And as the elements dissolve, the sense of self is dissolving. You know, in the early Theravadan texts, they say, learn to touch enlightenment with the body. In this teaching, I think it's pointing us to an understanding that the gateway to our realization is presence in this alive, embodied being that we are. So I want to close this talk with a quote from Ajahn Mun, a wonderful, extraordinary meditation master in the Thai tradition. He says, in your investigation of the world, never allow the mind to desert the body. Examine its nature. See the elements that comprise it. Kindly see impermanence, the suffering, the selflessness of the body, while sitting, while standing, while walking, while lying down. Then he says, true nature is seen fully and lucidly by the mind, heart, and the wonders of the world become clear. To awaken, we need to plant ourselves right here in this moment, this body, here on this earth. Thank you for your willingness to listen. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for being completely human.
Thank you so much, Frank. Wow, you have such a way of using story as a kind of meditation. I mean, as a true meditation. It's one thing to kind of say, okay, now drop into the body and feel your feet. But you really, anyway, I love how you did that and that body meditation. Thank you. We have some time still with our YouTube group, and I wonder if any of our YouTube 108 people actually watching now
a perfect
would like
number
to yes, would like to make any comments or questions that I could relay to Frank on the Zoom. So there's a little delay, so it can take a second, but and then in a few minutes, then we'll have the SCBT discussion. But for now, just
do they know how to do that, Noah?
Yeah, to make a comment in the YouTube chat.
Okay.
Thanks for the reminder. Somebody says, so many blessings. Thank you, Frank. Janelle says, wonderful. Thank you. Ray, this was so gorgeous. Thank you. Yeah.
The mind will help us discern. The heart will tell us, will show us what's true.
And the guts.
And the guts. Let's not forget the gut. None of it will happen if we're not resting in the gut.
The hara.
And that's where we'll take action from. When we know what's true, that's what we'll take action from.
So no, I think it's okay if we begin to open up questions with our SEBT community while our YouTube community is online. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, as you like. So we'll just leave it on YouTube, Roshi, for the discussion.
Yeah, just for a little while. That'd be nice.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Unless there's something on your heart and mind, Noah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But we've got hands raising, so
Okay. Birth and death, not so different, Noah.
thank you. I'll be meditating on that body. Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. During the entire period of the pandemic, I've been in almost daily phone contact with a woman who's 94 and is very ill. She's bound to her bed, and I'm limited in terms of my own capacity to help her because she does have a family, and it's problematic and neglectful, but I can't play a role sort of in that universe. But what I can do is I call her every day and we generally do a meditation together. But what I have found is that her mind, it's very, she's so grief stricken and she's in so much emotional pain that I can't use language with her in any kind of effective way. The only thing I can seem to do is maybe bring her some momentary relief in the meditation.
So, Rebecca, may I interrupt? When you say in any effective way, what do you mean? What are you hoping for?
Well, I think for a long time I found myself sort of trying to reach a kind of an imaginative place in her. In other words, so we would do these sort of collaborative drawings, or I was sort of fantasizing that I would be able to get her to another place.
Okay.
And they came to see that the grief and the pain, they will never budge, but she wants me to call her every day and breathe with her. So that maybe I need to work on accepting the limitations of that.
Well, maybe it's not so limited as you imagine. You know, what happens if you stop trying to get anywhere?
Right.
What will you have to share? You and her. What will you have? Come on. What would you say? Without fancy Buddhist language, what would you have to share?
I think just our mutual presence.
Yeah, your mutual presence, the breath, as you said. And why do you think she's asking you to call her back?
Yeah.
You said her family has discord. Why do you think she's asking you to call her back, Rebecca? What do you think she's looking for? What do you think she wants to share with you?
I think that maybe what I get hooked on is the calls always begin with a kind of like an intense sort of cry for help. In other words, terrible day and and so I think what I'm trying to learn to do is sort of not be reactive to that. So kind of I remain steady and I don't try to sort of fulfill her wish.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's great, Rebecca. That's really great. So what happens, often, at least for me, maybe it's true for you, under every complaint there's usually a need. Yeah. And you can just deal with the complaint or you can deal with the need. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying is the need for love. That she calls you back just because she wants to be loved. So just love her.
Yeah, okay.
Like love her up as much as you can, Rebecca. As hard as you can, love her completely. Imagine if in her dying, that's her most known experience. Very few people get to die that way, Rebecca. Love her up.
Okay.
Forget about everything else. Don't fix anything. Nothing to fix. No one special for you to be. No place special for her to go. Nothing special to do. Just love her. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that for her. Oh, that heals the world, Rebecca, when you do that. It's not just you and her. It's not just you and her. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, who else?
Thanks, Frank. We have one question from the YouTube chat.
Okay.
Are there any specific prayers you perform at the bedside?
Yes. I love you. May you be free of suffering. I love you. May you be free of suffering. May you know your most essential nature, or something along those lines, or whatever is naturally emerges from your heart. Yeah. I love you. I love you. May you be free of suffering. May you know your deepest nature. Nothing else is important.
That's a great prayer for any time, I would think, Frank.
Yeah. Yeah, we could say it now. Everybody to each other, silently. I love you. May you be free of suffering. May you know your deepest nature. Okay.
Thanks, Frank. Zoe.
Oh, Zoe. Hi.
Hi, Frank. This has been incredibly powerful. And as part of my participation in the socially engaged Buddhist training this year, I am volunteering at a hospice house that is modeled after Zen Hospice Project. So I go in. Sunday mornings are my mornings, and I've become incredibly grateful. It's a hospice house that in which my father spent his last 5 weeks, and I sort of helped him leave his body, essentially. And so I am struck. I love the topic of this talk. It really resonates with me so personally. And one of the things that I've noticed over the weeks that I've been spending time there with the residents is how present I am in my own body. Yeah. And how interesting it is, how natural that is for me, as I sort of remain fully present to whatever is unfolding in the moment. And how often I'm at a little bit of a loss for how to be of comfort to someone who is struggling with their own body and their physicality.
Yeah.
And what to say that might help them make sense of what's happening to them. And the normal ways in which I sort of help people. I do a lot of work in healing trauma in the sexual realm and guiding people into their bodies.
Briefly. Okay, good, Zoe. So great, but this isn't necessarily that same moment. And so those skills and talents that you have may be useful and maybe not.
Correct.
You know, Zoe, when you're we said it's very natural to be in your body when you're there with them, right? Like you're not having to do anything to yourself to do that, right? It's just pretty simple, huh? Yeah, how come it's so simple? Just a few words. How come it's so simple?
Because I'm practiced at awareness. I've trained.
Yes, that's true. That's all true. Your training is really coming forward in that moment. Wonderful. Yeah. And what are the two things that your training is inclining your heart and mind toward? You only get 2 words.
Presence and love.
Okay, those are pretty good ones. Yeah. I like it when people give me the answers I most like, compassion and wisdom, but presence and love are pretty good. Okay. So have confidence in those. Just as you have confidence in your training, that's why you can sit in a relaxed way. Have confidence in those. It doesn't require Zoe doing anything here. The dying process is trustworthy. I just explained all the things it does to reveal who we actually are. Trust it. Trust it. Don't get in the way. Okay? It's a trustworthy process. It has everything in it. It has all the conditions in it to help us awaken. Trust the process. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. I want to give as many people as possible time. I know we have, so we'll ask people to be brief in there if they come on live. And Noah, if you have anything, I don't know if the YouTube people want to make comments.
Just a lot of
they're not
love
actually
and
YouTube people.
gratitude. Yeah, just a lot of love and gratitude to you, Frank. No questions or comments other than that.
All right.
In the YouTube.
How about in SCBT? Anybody else want to speak directly to your
Jenny.
experience?
Hi, Jenny.
Jenny. Okay.
Hi, Frank.
Hi.
Hi, Roshi. Hi, everybody. This was just, I was so moved by, all of your words, but as I was reflecting, I recalled a time when I was, doing my own paperwork, so to speak, getting my affairs in order, advance directives and whatnot. And it really, I did this whole reflection about, what do I want done with what do I want my death to look like? What do I want my body to have done to that? And I grew up on a farm out in the prairies in western Kansas. And the thing that resonated most tonight and brought that to mind was returning to earth.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was just profound, and it really struck very closely home for me, especially in these times. And it brought peace. And it brings a sense of coming home.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Beautiful, Jenny. I'm glad. And as I described in the talk, the earth returns to earth, or sometimes we say earth dissolves into water. But pragmatically, we just had a friend who was a leader in the organic farming community, and he went through a process called Recombine. There's now being offered in some places up in the state of Washington, where people actually are composted and then return to the earth. Actually, I think it takes 40 some odd days. I've forgotten now. I don't think it's 49 exactly, but close to it. Yeah. So it's caused me to change my view about what I do after my death. I used to think I'd be cremated. Now I think, oh, but all those beings that are living on my body, they'll be hurt. They'll be killed. Just put me in the ground and let things have their way. Yeah. Okay.
There are a couple more questions from YouTube and one from SCBT.
Okay.
Frank. So we'll take these as our last questions.
Fine.
So Jody says, I got to sit with my mother as she died last fall. It was precious to be there and create peace as she died. She was unconscious for much of it. What do you recommend to practice for the unconscious?
Stay conscious. In other words, what I mean is, as the companion, stay very aware, stay very, very conscious of what's occurring. Yeah. Don't slip away. Yeah. Unconsciousness isn't in itself a problem. Even in meditation, we have experiences of cessation, which are a form of unconsciousness. We go unconscious for a period of time. And something like this, we could say, happens in the dying process as well. In my own experience of illness, my own personal experiences of illness, there have been periods of cessation and deep absence, and I didn't find them to be problematic later. So even when, how can I say this? Consciousness will eventually dissolve. It will dissolve into space. And so don't be so troubled by its temporary absence. Yeah. Keep dealing with the person as a whole human being. That's what's most important. Keep dealing with them as a whole human being, even if they're confused or they're demented or you can't find them in a normal way. Keep dealing with them as a whole human being. Yeah.
Thanks, Frank.
No,
I have two more questions that seem, both of them are kind of doubled, which is so the first one related to the pandemic. How have you done this kind of service given the limitations of contact imposed by pandemic isolation? And related to that, what can we do for someone who is dying but we can't be there physically?
Well, in the last few weeks, I've helped 3 families companion their 96-year-old mothers and grandmothers through the dying process. And there were 3 different kinds of processes. I won't propose to describe them all, but some were, at least initially, very, very tumultuous and difficult. And others, everybody climbed into bed and just loved up grandma, you know. So, but I Zoomed with them. So I was able to talk to them as I'm talking to you. And they were able to, in their case, they were able to be with their loved ones physically. Sometimes we can't. Now, I always advocate for people challenging the rules. You know, some of our rules around COVID have unintended consequences. And so I encourage you to challenge those rules sometimes, particularly in places like nursing homes. It's not always easy in a hospital, but it is in smaller facilities. You know, I have a friend whose father was dying in another country, and she was with him over on her iPad, you know, and when he was dying, she pressed her face against the iPad in this absurd attempt at intimacy, but she also told him how much she loved him and was assured that he was hearing what she was saying. So we always have to be creative around dying. And now this time is no different. We have to be creative around dying, and we have to sometimes work through the people like Jenny who are in palliative care, who are playing double roles with people in hospitals, who are dying in hospitals, for example, or nurses and, you know, temporarily family members. Yeah. So we work through them and we trust them too, and we understand they're part of the process as well. We are never dying alone, and we are never accompanying people who are dying alone. We're always, always doing it in the company of other beings. Just as when we meditate, we're never meditating all by ourselves. We're always sitting with and for all beings. Okay.
Thank you, Frank. Can we do one more? It looks like, or Roshi, did you want to talk?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm just, anyway, let's take one more and then I'll give my final hug to you. And I'm glad we get to be together so much starting Friday.
Me too. Okay, Noah, briefly, what is
so
it?
These 2 sweet questions came up at exactly the same time, one on YouTube and one in SCBT from different people. Mm-hmm. SCBT says, I'm about to start volunteering in hospice for the first time. I'm a crier, and I'm afraid I will cry in the presence of the people I'm there to serve. What is your advice? And thank you. And here on YouTube, someone said, I've been wanting to volunteer at hospice, but I cry very easily and have been in tears for most of this time with you. Do you think that would be disturbing for one who is dying?
Well, I'll say to both of you, I've never, ever have a person who was dying tell me to stop crying and get out of the room. I've never had that happen. So, but I also don't use hospice patients as my therapists. I don't, have them, I don't try and work out my stuff when I'm with them. I understand that some of that stuff has to be done when I'm at home. Yeah. So just be real and be human, and tears are part of being real and human. That's all. Yeah. What's most important is to be real. Don't get caught in spiritual ideals or some notion of, some idealism. Idealism in this case is violence. It will keep us from being real with people when they need us most. Okay. Roshi Lao. Oh, Roshi, I'm so glad we'll be together on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
ready.
I'm ready
And
too.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, Frank and I haven't seen each other in the flesh, so to speak, in, several years. And yet I just have this feeling of immediacy all the time with you.
Yeah.
I carry you, in the heart, but, the distance that we're experiencing on the physical level, although, this is about the body, it is not separating us.
Thank you for carrying me in your heart and for carrying me up the mountain to those ridge tops where you walk, and I can vicariously go with you. So thank you for both of those things. Yeah.
And love to all my friends on YouTube and my SEBT community. And take care. Be safe. Please be safe and protect your friends. This is Jenny, I know, feels deeply about this, as do the other clinicians who are online. This is a very strange time we're in, the time when we have a lot to learn, and also a time where we have a lot of responsibility to be a community of care.
Thank you all. Please be kind to yourself. Please love yourself. You won't find anyone more deserving of that love. And then it'll just spill out from you and touch everybody in the world.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Roshi. And we look forward to seeing you begin Love and Death on Friday. And I hope to see everyone else there. Shall we end with the 4 vows?
Let's please do that. Beings. You going to chant with me, Noah?
I think the residents, there we go.
Okay, good.